In 1998, NWA came out with a fairly controversial song. Now, after watching the Netflix documentary American Nightmare, when it comes to the Vallejo PD and the FBI, I am in total agreement with how NWA felt about the Popo. After a harrowing home invasion and kidnapping in 2015, a couple is accused of staging the ordeal when the woman reappears. So I'd never heard of the case involving Denise Huskins and Aaron Quinn, a couple who allegedly had their home invaded, Aaron drugged and bound, and Denise drugged, bound, kidnapped, and then sexually assaulted and held for ransom, only to be released shortly after. Now, this took place in Vallejo, California, which is not too far from where I live. The documentary, it's 3 episodes, and while I normally would balk at the length, the way that this is told, the 3 episodes help to build out a story that's almost too outlandish to believe. And really, that's where the large crux of the story lays. The Vallejo PD aggravatingly don't ever consider that all that Aaron's telling them could be actually true. So because of that mindset and their massive amount of confirmation bias, the PD believes the couple is mimicking the David Fincher movie Gone Girl in order to gain attention. Now, the first part of this documentary is Aaron's story, and we get a ton of interview footage as he's being interrogated by the police. It's sickening to see people who are supposed to serve and protect treat a victim first and foremost like a suspect. The large amount of conclusions that Vallejo Detective Mustard, or like I called him, Colonel Mustard, jumps to, I think it's so egregious. Now, we also get wonderful first-hand interviews from Aaron, detailing not only the events of that fateful night, but all the interactions and conversations he experienced all the way along. We're also given insight from his legal team and his parents. We also get thoughts and emotions that are recounted by Denise's family, showing their concern as well as their suspicion. Now, because one of the craziest portions of this case is that Denise was released, the second episode features interviews with her. Now, these are heartbreaking, and as somebody who didn't know anything about the case, it was also easy to side with the naysayers who believe that she was involved in her own kidnapping. I mean, it's twisted and bizarre, and then it's disgustingly horrifying to hear about her experience. I mean, what she said she endured, it is tragic, and we can see the agony and the terror in her eyes as she recounts her torment. Now, I love how this narrative is told because as Denise tells about her kidnapping and some of the events following her release, we also get insight and detail from her lawyer. Each of the interviews, they are riveting and, as strange as it sounds, entertaining. Now, the bombshells and WTF moments come in the final episode. Now, I'm not going to get into specifics just in case you're unfamiliar with this case too, like I was. But another law enforcement agency, the Dublin PD, gets involved, and this is where surprising things are uncovered. This whole documentary plays out like a mystery thriller. The doc also pulls in tons of news footage showing how this case mirrors Gone Girl, which had been released just a year prior. These coincidences make it difficult to determine who to believe, but what is absolutely clear from almost the get-go is how the Vallejo PD treated Aaron and the initial investigation. And I know from watching a ton of true crime shows that the husband or the boyfriend of missing women, they're more often than not the perpetrators of violence. But from watching the interrogation footage with Aaron, it's very easy to see how they approached from the standpoint that he was absolutely guilty. I mean, this wasted valuable time in locating Denise. And when more details are discovered later on in the documentary, their behaviors and actions probably going to make you want to set them on fire. There are a lot of reenactments that are interspersed throughout this documentary. And while I'm typically less than enthused to see these placed, in this presentation, they enhance the interviews and they provide visual reinforcement. They're not cheesy or poorly acted, and typically we don't even see full bodies in the reenactments, just parts of bodies, just to showcase movement or action. And while these are prevalent throughout the episodes, they don't feel overused. And I think that also could be because some of the reenactments, they're interspersed with body cam or media footage that complement each other. Now, this is a very twisted story that can also serve as a cautionary tale on multiple fronts. The interviews are intensely captivating and heartbreaking, not flinching from the hurt and the despair the couple displays. The pacing of the narrative is balanced and not rushed, but told in an electric manner, filled with stress and energy. And this also is delivered in a very satisfying way with a conclusion that doesn't leave threads dangling, but wraps up each element and provides answers to all the questions it raises. There's a massive amount of injustice in these accounts, but thankfully, a detective in the Dublin PD takes their job way more seriously than her counterparts in Vallejo. Otherwise, this would have been even more of a tragic story than it already is. Now, I'm not sure how captivating the documentary is going to be if you're already familiar with the case, but as somebody who went in completely blind, this was a jaw dropping and infuriating watch that had me continually just yelling expletive comments at the Vallejo PD detectives thanks to their actions, or maybe inaction. The story is told to us in a way that's informative and complete, answering more than it asks so there is no ambiguity when the documentary is done. And for as aggravating and frustrating as this case was, I was hooked by the excellent editing of interview and media footage to put together a cohesive and straightforward account of a case that was anything but. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and while no violence is shown, we're given graphic descriptions of violence, including multiple accounts of sexual assault. As a reminder, I don't give couch ratings to documentaries, but I highly recommend giving American Nightmare a go. It's wildly unbelievable, and the truth could actually make your head spin. So have you seen any other true crime documentaries that are worth checking out? I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.